and this little one here, which is a little fawn, it's just bottle feeding, was injured and couldn't even stand when he came in. So he was either hit by a car or something else traumatic. Welcome to the 10 Acre Woods. My name's Mark, and it is now the end of 2019. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to look back on the year and update you as to what went on. I know I get some comments in the comments section talking about, what about this guy? How come this guy's back? Or how come that guy's gone? So I have done videos on everybody, so maybe you just kind of missed that episode. So I'll cover mostly everything. I'm not going to cover all of it, but you can go to our main page on our YouTube channel, and you can click on the playlists, and you'll find there that there's a playlist that I've made for each year. So if you like binge watching, head on over there, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and give it a thumbs up if you like the video, because comments and thumbs up and all those activities that happen on the channel actually help my channel grow. So that would be much appreciated. So in January of this year, Moira came in. Now, Moira came in from a farm where I'm getting, look at this, look at it. I come in here. Hi, Hazel. We'll get to you in a little bit. So Moira came in from a farm. She was smaller than all the other ones, so she couldn't be put in with the other animals on the farm, and basically taking up an area, and they didn't quite know what to do with her. So they had contacted us, and we took her in. So I'm not sure. I'm getting my fingers chewed on by the goats. I'm not sure how old she is. We're not quite sure about that, but she's in here and she fits in nicely with all of these little ones. You guys, you're just, as soon as I come in here, you're like right here. Oh yes, I enjoy spending time with all of you. Now Moira is still a little shy. She's much better than she was, but you can see she does shy off. So she wasn't, she was a herd animal on the farm. So she wasn't a lot of hands-on with her. Okay guys, we'll be back. Oh, listen to all that racket. Moving on, January and February, what we do is we do a bunch of different classes during the winter. There's not a whole lot going on outside. You know, it's cold, it's windy, it's snowy, so we take it inside and we do things like mitt making classes. We do wool spinning, carding, processing classes, rustic signs, candle making, all kinds of different things like that. Last year I got a laser engraving machine, so that's kind of helped out in some of making some patterns and cutting out some things. So also in March we were getting ready for kids. So what we do is we bring the male goats, our studs, back into the back area with everybody, and we do that usually in the November time frame. Early November, and that gives us spring babies probably in around April. It's a 150-day gestation period for goats. So what we do is we bring the boys back, and then we move them back up to the front in March, and we move the girls into the building at that same time. So what we did is all the animals that you did see in there, they all come outside in March, and that opens up the area for the mamas to go in. And of course, if there's animals that are too young, like Holly is too young and Billie Jean, we don't want them in with the stud goats because that just poses a problem there. So boys go up front and the mamas go in, and the little ones and everybody else goes out. So we did put them out last year up front, and we had some problems with our electric fence, which we've since resolved, we think and we hope, with the addition of the rabbit hutch. So it's somewhat more secure now. So Billy is off yard right now doing his business over at another farm, and Carl is here now. So what we'll end up doing is probably next weekend, or shortly anyway, we'll put Billy back up front, just so that they're not both together. We've only got one to deal with. And then when, Carl, we'll put Carl up front, and then when Billy does come back, he'll go directly right up front. And that'll likely be in beginning of January, mid-January at the latest, probably. I think that's when we're expecting him to come back. So in April is when we have, it's Easter, and we have an Easter event. And we've done this for probably over 10 years now. It started out when we first moved out. We bought this property in '97. We moved out in 2001. And our neighbors had she was a minister, and she put on this small little event, this little Easter event, and it would spread out some chocolate eggs, and the kids would do a little candy scramble. Now, she has since moved away, and we kind of took that over, and we had it at our local community club for years, and we've now moved it on to farm, which it's just, there's more space here, and we have, you know, up to 350 people that come by. It's a free event that we put on. We get chocolates and all kinds of little stuffed animals and stuff for the kids. And then we do things like donut chomp, which is hanging a donut off of a string and eating the donuts, candy scrambles, all kinds of just different fun things, just something that we can give back to the community, something we enjoy doing, and we like giving and sharing what we have. So also in March, we started up the egg incubator. So we have a 256 egg incubator that we bought a number of years back. Now we don't use it a whole lot, not as much as we initially thought we were going to. So we decided we needed some more hens. We use our, the hens lay the eggs, and we love those farm fresh eggs. So we decided, well, there's a few people out there that want to get some of their eggs hatched. So we threw it out there on Facebook asking people who want some eggs of theirs hatched. And then what we do is we'll keep a couple of theirs just to get, you know, a little bit of a mixture. In April, we had, our kids were born. So the kid goats were born. And as I mentioned earlier, we do live stream that, but I also like to do an independent video that I publish on YouTube for each one of them. Or if two of them had them in one evening, then I'll kind of do a mixture. So you can expect to see a couple extra videos, usually around that time, just to give you an update and keep you informed. Of course, a lot of you that are watching the live stream are able to see that. And it's pretty exciting when that happens. And of course, you know, we're just waiting and waiting and waiting. And then when it does happen, it's pretty exciting. So I usually leave the live stream up and running for probably a week or two afterwards. Then everybody goes out back, the kids are outside, it's warmer, and then usually I'll shut off the live stream at that time. Now, also speaking of kids or babies, we had Levi came in last year, and he's a miniature horse. You've probably seen him, the gray one, and he came in with two female ponies, Willow and Shadow. So he wasn't gelded. We ended up gelding him here because he was very high strung, and of course we didn't want him to impregnate the girls. But you know, he had already done his thing. Willow was pregnant, so in April, went out on the back porch. Looked out and noticed that Willow was in labor. Now, we had been watching this and keeping a close eye on her, and she needed a little bit of help. So I had pulled some footage off of the house camera, and I headed down there and went down, and of course the two hoofs were sticking out. So she pushed and I pulled, and we had a little filly. So the little filly's name is Meadow. It was funny because when she was first born, Willow was a little bit out of it, you know, the labor and everything going on, and Shadow was right there, just kind of watching on the whole thing. And little Meadow ended up going over to Shadow instead of Mama, and they had bonded. And to this day, you'll see them hanging out. Shadow's kind of the cool aunt. So because of that, what we ended up doing is taking Meadow and Willow in and locking them up inside the shelter. Because we wanted to make sure that, of course, the little one was safe, and we wanted to monitor her and make sure she was eating. Tara and Tiana got in there with the two of them and made sure things were going. Of course, Willow was a little sore, and once Meadow started feeding and the colostrum went out and the milk started coming in, things were a little more natural. So then at a point after that, after a few weeks, we let them out into the yard with everybody else. Now, one of the questions some of you had asked, I've seen in the comments, is whatever happened to the two or three hens that came in for Fernando, or turkey? So I had done a little video on that. It was included in a video that what had happened was we thought, well, let's go get Fernando some girls. So we picked up 3 girls. We had them in the building, and then when it warmed up, or when they were secure enough and they kind of knew each other, we let them out into the yard. Now what had happened was one of them started to wander, and we think that she got hit by a predator. She did come back, but she had a large gash on the side of her. So we had put her inside the building, and unfortunately, she didn't make it. So we decided to clip the hen's wings and put them into our nursery area. Now we started to notice that they were laying, and one of them was sitting. So of the eggs that they were sitting on, we had one little Jake, or little chick that hatched out. We did put him in there for a time being, but he was a little bit rough with the girls. And we thought, okay, well, let's, we made the attempt at least in our matchmaking. It didn't quite work out. And we had a local farm that came and visited, or found out about us, I think, on Facebook about the hens. We were looking for a home. And of course he said, oh, is that Fernando's little boy? Yes, definitely. I want him, and I'll take the 2 hens. So I did touch base on Levi and the 2 ponies coming in. Now we had rehomed Levi last year, and what had happened was he did end up coming back to us in May. The reason for that was the neighboring property that the owner had was not hers. She was using the land that was really unused. But due to a property dispute, the other owner of that property told them that they needed to get rid of the horse that was on their land. So they didn't have enough room set out and set aside for their area, so Levi had to actually come back. So also in May, we had Miss Bits, which is a little, well, she was named Bacon Bits, but some people kind of took offense to that. So we just called her Miss Bits, just to make everybody happy. Now she came in, she was actually a pet, a house pet of an elderly gentleman. Now his health was going downhill, and he couldn't tend to his pig anymore. Just a little bit too much. So he was, I understand he was in and out of the hospital quite a bit, and friends and family kind of got together and figured, well, let's find a home for the pig. So they contacted us via Facebook, and we welcomed Miss Bits in, and she was actually rehomed. Very friendly pig, the type of pig you can just rub on the side and she'll just roll right over. So she was ready to go home. But she was actually a pet pig anyway, so that helps tremendously in rehoming. Now, when I talk about rehoming, some comments on the channel, people have said, well, why do you rehome? Why don't you, and you should get this kind of animal and this kind of animal. We have to watch how many animals we do have. I did touch base on this a couple weeks ago in another video, and it's all about the number of animals in the space that you're allowed. And that's done in what's called AU units, or animal units, and essentially it's the amount of poop they produce. So we're only allowed so many animals, and if we hit that marker and keep all the animals on yard, then we can't bring any more in. So what we do is we'll bring in the ones in that need the help, and we'll rehome the other ones that are ready to be rehomed. But we always make sure that it's a good home they're going to. And Tara's good at that. She'll jump on Facebook, and she'll get in there and she'll look at photos and she'll see pictures of the yard. And she'll make a final decision whether we actually do want to rehome or if we don't. Now, sometimes we do charge an adoption fee out, but there's a lot of cases where we don't. We just find them homes, and we tell them to take that adoption fee that you would have paid us and put that towards the animal's health. Build the animal a little enclosure, a little extra food, some heated watering dishes, or however. So we want to make sure that the animal, when they leave here, is, set up good at their new home. So every year, in around the end of May, June, depending on the season, how warm it is out, we do sheep shearing. And we wait until about, beginning of June-ish, just because the nights can get fairly cool. So we want to make sure, if we're going to be taking off the wool coat off of our sheep, we want to make sure that they are going to be warm. So that's fairly important. Now, as I mentioned earlier, in the winter time, we do the wool processing, and that processing is from our animals. So we've got a lot of equipment, and Tiana just got something now. It's a winder, and it actually winds it up into a ball. I guess there's probably a technical term, but I can't think of that. And it's kind of neat. So we played around with it. It wasn't quite working, and we oiled a few things, and now Tara's inside. This is her time. If she doesn't have a class on the weekend, during the week she is usually carding, and Tiana is spinning, because Tara hasn't quite figured out how to use the spinning wheel as of yet. So we've gone quite a few years without losing any animals. But, when you have animals that come in, and when you have them for a long period of time, you do lose some animals. So you have to kind of be ready for that. It can be tough depending on the animal and how close and friendly they were and how long you had them. Now, one of the ones we lost was Patches. So Patches has been with us, I think, about 4 years now. She came in with Snow, and we're not sure of their age. Now, goats usually live, on average, usually about 15 years, so we weren't sure how old Patches was. Now, it wasn't an age thing that got her, it was an infection. So from our understanding, what had happened was, or what could have happened, eating hay, got a thorn or something up into the jaw. It was likely into the jaw, because what happened was there was an infection that set in, and it got into the brain. And then she couldn't walk properly, her balance was off, and glossy eyes. Now, the vet had mentioned that it was likely something in the mouth because it happened so fast. Now, we jumped on it as soon as we noticed that, and we got injections, and we started giving her regular injections. That went on for about 3 weeks. Nothing seemed to have gotten any better. So we made that decision. And that's a decision that you kind of have to make. Do you go and do all these injections, or do you make that decision? The important thing is that it's for the animal. You want to make sure that the animal isn't suffering. And we kind of thought, it was 3 weeks that went by. Maybe we were trying too hard for ourselves. Maybe we should have let go a little bit earlier, but of course, going through these issues helps us as things go by, and it helps you to deal with it as well. So we had Patches, and then there were 2 kids that also passed away. Now, it was likely from the condition of Patches. They were feeding. We wanted to keep the kids feeding with her. for a couple reasons. We wanted to make sure that the kids were being goats out with mom, and we wanted to make sure that Patches was being stimulated by the kids. So just kind of helping each other out. Now we were making bottles for the kids to give them some supplement. They were feeding decent, I want to say. They weren't great on the bottle because, of course, they hadn't really seen the bottle before. But the two kids passed away, and then we decided to put down Patches, and we said our goodbyes. So that was kind of a sad time, but again, we have to realize these things do happen. It hurts a little bit, but it's what's best for the animal, which is important. I was planning on going around the yard, and when I talk about Levi, I was going to be up with Levi, but that's quite a bit of walking around. It's now blowing snow outside that I can see, and it actually works pretty good in here because it's not windy and it's quiet, so you can probably hear me a lot better. Okay, so one thing that happened, here's one of the things that happened this year that you may not be aware of, a lot of you anyway. So in the past, we have done quite a few deer rescues. Now, what that means is an animal that is injured, not taken from an area found by people that they think is abandoned. Because generally, they're not abandoned. The moms will come and go during the day, and we've actually told people to go put the deer back where you found it. Monitor the area, watch the grass, make sure that it is being trampled down, or maybe the little one is moved, and just that the little kid is aware. So we've gotten in deer primarily from being hit by vehicles. I think the count is about 9 deer we've had over the years. Now, it is illegal to have deer, and the reason for that is they don't want every person that lives out in the country or wherever to go and take deer or little ones and raise them as pets. So deer are wild animals, and they're not to be used as pets. So what we do is, of course, they don't go in our yard as pets, and they do get re-released into the wild. And to do that, you want to make sure that they're coming in with, they have as little human contact as possible. So getting around that, we did have a deer that came in this spring, and it was hit by a car along with its mother. So its mother was found on the highway. She had died. The little one couldn't stand. You could see the umbilical cord, so it was only a few days old. So the people had contacted us, and we brought the little one in. So Tara got on the bottle. We feed them goat's milk, which is great. It's got lots of protein and lots of fats in it. So it's an excellent feed for a lot of baby animals, and it's our primary use for having small animals that come in. We had taken the little one and put it in the barn, covered with a blanket, had a nice little warm spot, and Tara would go out and do regular feeds. So what it was is the reason why the little one couldn't stand. Obviously, he had hit his head. There was some brain swelling going on. Now, this had happened a few times over the past few years on different deer. Nothing was broken, and that's something that you have to kind of watch for. But it was just brain swelling. So once the brain swelling goes down, they have full function, and they can stand and walk normally. So after being in the barn, we wanted to get the little deer outside. So this is where the hay bale or straw bale garden comes in. So you may have noticed if you're watching the channel that I haven't really done updates later in the year on the straw bale garden. It did great, actually. But unfortunately, we went and took a deer and put it in our bale garden. So it didn't do too well after that. We went out and we could see him going through and grabbing the carrot tops and pulling them out, and the carrot along with it. So we kind of sacrificed our bale garden for the deer. So we did actually get some potatoes. The potato leaves were completely barren. There was just a couple sticks coming out. But at the end of the season, Tara did dig it up, and we got a few, quite a few potatoes out of there. So it wasn't so bad. So bar not having any deer this coming year, we should be good, and I'll be able to give you regular updates on the bale garden. Now, we did have Manitoba Conservation come and visit because they heard that we had a deer. It was right after we had a school group that came in with about 150 to 200 people. And somebody obviously wandered in there and figured they would call the authorities and let them know. Now, under normal circumstances, what would happen is they would come out and they would euthanize the deer. Because, you know, you can't have them. But we talked to them and told them, you know, what we're doing. And their big question was, are you keeping it as a pet? Does the pet have a name? So that was the huge concern. So when they were comfortable with us knowing that we were going to re-release, they said, yeah, okay, that's fine. Just keep it on the lowdown, which is, again, a reason why I didn't post it on YouTube. We didn't put it on our Facebook page. So whenever we have wild animals, we want to make sure that that is something that's kept quiet. However, if you are interested in knowing about that as it happens, I have a Patreon page. So there's I think it's for a minimum $10 a month. You can get onto Patreon. And then you can get all that extra content. So I did post the deer video as well as a few other videos that have happened on there, some behind the scenes type stuff. So if you're interested in being a Patreon, you can head over to that, and the link's down in the description. So last winter when we were in the barn, we noticed that it's quite dusty in there. And it's a little dreary. You know, it's just OSB board, it's unfinished, just raw wood, it's kind of brown and dusty. So we figured, if we were living in there, we would like it to be a little bit more cheerful. And we figured the animals would appreciate that. So what we ended up doing was I picked up a whole bunch of paint and we started priming. So there was Tara, myself, and a couple volunteers that came out. And we took on the job of going through the entire barn and just putting a white coat on the entire surface. The plan was to then paint the ceiling blue to make it kind of look like sky, and then maybe do some clouds or such on there. But when we put on that first coat of blue paint, we noticed it was getting quite dark again. So we just decided to leave all the surfaces white. And then later on, what we did is we painted painted trees on the walls. Try to give it that, outside kind of look. Something cute and playful. Now, August, Daisy. So Daisy is a miniature pony that came in. And she was at a farm, and she had a lot to eat. So her feet were in pretty rough shape. When you have ponies on lush grass, they can eat, and they can eat too much. And what happens is they develop fat on their body, and some of that can show up on their hoofs, on their ankles, and then of course that partnered up with not seeing a farrier to have the hoofs done on a regular basis just leads to a disaster. So when she came in, she was in very rough shape. Coming off the trailer, she had a hard time. We were actually going to go get a ramp for her, but she made it down on her own. And it was a little sad to see. We had the farrier come out shortly after, check her out. And what has to happen is basically it comes off in small pieces over a longer period of time. So we're hoping that by this next summer in 2020, that she'll be fully recovered, and our farrier does have a good outlook for her recovery. So she has been seen throughout the late part of the summer, starting to run around, which is just very exciting when you compare that to when she first came in. So something else that happened was the kid goats. So they went home in August. So we keep them usually till the end of August. We actually have a waiting list for our goats. One of them is someone in Denmark is actually interested in getting one of our goats this next season. So I'm going to have to figure out the logistics there on how to fly a goat overseas. So we do actually have a waiting list for our goats, but of course the stipulation is the goats will go home in August. So they remain here on farm for people to enjoy. And of course we do goat yoga as well. So the kids are very active in goat yoga. And if you're down in your downward dog or whatever low poses, the kids will run along and they'll jump up on you and just hang out because they love to be on higher surfaces. So in September, we had Princess Piggy come in. These names for animals. So Princess Piggy was from what I understand, was rescued from a farm, and she was put into a piggy or animal foster care type system. Some rescues will not have grounds on their yard. They will actually work on a fostering system. So they'll take an animal that's in need and they'll post that they require a foster home for the animal. So Princess Piggy went off to this farm, or this, well, the farmhouse, because she was inside. She turned into an inside pig, basically, because she was young. Pigs being inside isn't always the best thing. Animals should really learn to be animals. So she was starting to get stressed and she wasn't eating properly. So there were definitely some nourishment issues and concerns there. People that have pets, dogs, pigs, and any kind of pet really, sometimes, give table scraps and things of that nature, unhealthy things for animals, which isn't always the best for them. So she was starting to get restless in the house. She was starting to do some damage. She looked depressed. She just kind of shut down. So they moved off to another foster home. And it just carried on. And then she went to a third foster home. And finally, that third foster home said, no, this is it. I can't keep her. So they contacted us and we brought her out and we put her out with our animals. And lo and behold, after almost immediately, she cheered up and she was in great shape. So sometimes, we have to let animals be animals. We decided it was time to redo the rabbit hutch. Now, the two rabbit hutches we have outside are some of the oldest buildings on the property, and we closed them in, but the grade of the roof didn't allow us to really do a pass-through from the back main yard to the front yard, which is something that we wanted to do now that we have the front all fenced in and we've got some animals up there, just for accessibility. Also, having the doors on a metal roof, under a metal roof, what happens is the ice and rain run down and they fall right in front of the door. So of course we were forever ice chipping, especially in the spring when things are melting and freezing. We had a problem there. So what we ended up doing is we changed the roof design so that it was peaking in the center, allowing for the door at the front and the back, and then grading down to the two sides so that water would, and snow and ice, would run off the ends of the building instead of falling down in front of the door, essentially. So some other exciting news is if you watch the Fernando episode, our turkey, our extremely friendly turkey, Fernando actually had a beer named after him. So we had some people that came out and visited over the summer who own a brewery in Switzerland, and they were visiting family in the city of Winnipeg. So when they got home, they had this red ale that was processing, and they were trying to come up with a name. And they thought, that Fernando, he was quite the character. We should name the beer after him. So if you're watching, I'm still waiting for that case of beer to be sent over, because I'd love to try that. At least give me an empty bottle or something. So October, we had 2 donkeys come in. Now these aren't the first donkeys we've ever had here on the farm. We've probably had, I want to say about 3 or 4 donkeys in the past. And we've rehomed those donkeys for different reasons. And again, you can go back and watch some of those videos. I won't get into the details here, but they were good stories. Now we had Esme and Chinook. So the story with them is Esme is a breeding mare donkey. And Chinook, well, he was a little rambunctious. He was breaking out of fences. He was just being a bad boy, essentially. So the owners just didn't know what to do with him. They were like, this is ridiculous. So Esme is very particular on the males she hangs around, and she'll let them know when they're out of line. So they thought, okay, well, let's geld him, and then we'll put Chinook in with Esme, and Esme can keep him in line. And sure enough, she did. And now you go out there, and wherever Esme is, Chinook's right beside her. So it was kind of a cute story. They were the last 2 donkeys on a farm that bred donkeys. And from my understanding, they were moving. So they needed a place for the 2 of them to go. And they gave us a call, and we were happy to take them in. So also in October, we had more pigs. 7 pigs come in. And they came in from it was a local petting farm that has been open for years and years. It was run by an elderly lady, but her health was starting to go downhill, and she was in the hospital quite a bit. So the volunteers and family and friends decided to intervention and find a place for the animals. So there was lots of people that were willing to, and Tara was on messaging saying, if you need anything, let us know, and we'll take some of the animals in and help them out. So the provincial vet was involved because there was a lot of kind of hands in the pot there, and he wanted to kind of do an assessment and figure out what was there and where they should be going to make sure that they had a good home. Ooh, I might be inside, but it's starting to get a little chilly in here. All right, so we're almost done. So November was Hazel. So we saw Hazel out there, and she is, I like to call her a lap goat. Because if you go out there and sit down, she'll just climb right on your lap. So she didn't know how to be a goat. What had happened was it was a young girl that had Hazel. Hazel was born, I believe it was June or July of this year, so she's still pretty young. Now her parents are separated. Her mother lives in the country. Her father lives in the city. And of course, a girl and her goat. So she would kind of go back and forth, and the goat would go with her. But taking a goat into the city, being in the house, there was a lot of crying going on from the goat. Hazel wasn't happy. When Hazel wasn't happy, Dad wasn't happy because, of course, he couldn't sleep and do things that you should be able to do without a goat screaming in your living room. So some other sad news, another loss. We lost Lucy in November. So Lucy was 5 years old, and of course her mother had nutrient deficiencies from the place that she came from. We didn't even realize she was pregnant, and then she had a couple kids. Now they had white muscle disease from a lack of selenium mineral deficiency in their feed. So she didn't have the nutrients she needed. So we lost Joey, which was Lucy's brother, and Lucy pulled through. But over the years, she's always been small. And of course, we went and registered her in for Guinness Book of World Records, the smallest goat. Because, her growth was just stunted. Her horns were only about this big. When you look at the other goats out in our yard, their horns are quite a bit larger. So she did go up and down. She, her fur, her skin, And it was just something, you know, we just dealt with over the years, and it was a fairly regular occurrence. And then we noticed that she was down again. Tara kind of had a feeling. She has these, I don't know if it's woman's intuition, I guess. But she saw something that, you know, that was it. It was time. So she went in, kind of said her goodbye. And sure enough, that night, Lucy did pass away. December comes around. A few weeks ago, we lost yet another one, and this is something that you are unaware of. We wanted to save it until kind of after Christmas. I just felt I didn't want to put that out there on you. I wanted you to have a good holiday. But Barry the alpaca. So Barry passed away just before the holiday season. So that was tough. Barry, you know, you get attached to these guys. And Barry, we're not sure how old he was. They usually live anywhere from, I think it's about 10 to 15 years, in around 15 years. Alpacas will live. Llamas will live to about 20 years old. But we're not sure how old he was. He's been with us for about 3 years. And for the last, I want to say a year, from time to time, we would notice that, you know, he was in a little rough shape. So we were on there, we were proactive. We made sure that he had the deworming, because loss of energy, you can have worms, and that just takes a toll on the body. So we made sure he was dewormed. We would give him extra feed. And then towards the end, Tara came out and he was down and he just wouldn't get up. So she helped him up and brought him inside. Hannibal's another one, which I've mentioned this in the past. Hannibal is old. He's quite an old man. And, you know, there's going to be a video that I'm going to have to make that, you know, Hannibal's gone. But right now he's better than he's ever been, really, since when he first came in. So Tara took Barry in, took Hannibal in, put them in the back. And then Hannibal got in there and looked around, and there was nothing for him to eat, and he wanted out. So you weren't going to keep Hannibal in. He was like, let me out of here. I got to get outside with my people. I don't want to be in here with the kids. So Tara let him out, said, fine, you go in. So Barry, you know, it was a few days that Barry was in there. Now, you know, we watched his poop. We watched he was alert. He was pooping fine. Everything was normal, with the exception that he just, you know, he just couldn't get up. So we figured it has to be age. And he was awake and right up until the end, and then he passed away one night. So it was nice because some of the volunteers got to come out and see him and say goodbye to him. So, and it's kind of, you kind of know when things are happening. It's not as much of a shock when things like this do happen, if you're kind of expecting it. So that was the sad story just before Christmas. So I hope you liked this video on a look back at the year. I thought it was a nice way to kind of bring things together, kind of bring you up to speed. Again, I didn't cover everything in this video, so you can always go back and click on our playlists, and you can go through and you can binge watch if it's cold where you are. Some people down in Australia, hello, good day, mate. It's warm and it's actually summer down there. So you're probably outside enjoying it while we freeze ourselves here in the Northern Hemisphere. So if you did like this video, please give me that thumbs up. Every little bit helps. And again, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please, I encourage you to click that subscribe button. You can always unsubscribe later if you feel that you don't like my content. Anyway, until next time, which may be a live stream next weekend, we're going to see how that plays out. Have a wonderful week, and actually I might even have a couple other little videos, little snippets in there as well. So we'll see, maybe I'll surprise you. Have a good week, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.